I'd like to call to order the second meeting for the Town of East Troy Planning Commission. Let's see, we don't have any minutes to approve. The first item on the agenda is the variance for Julie and John Grayhack. There were some outstanding questions regarding the view corridor, and I think that was the primary issue, was it not? Did anybody have a chance to get their definition on what that entails?
Yeah, so Jen printed out a page on the Walworth County process for boathouses, and it highlights some of the topics we've discussed. So
Awesome.
it should be in front of you. I think we talked a little bit about the viewing corridor, so that falls within the vegetation management section.
Okay.
So I'll read it out loud just so that we all have it. So a zoning permit may be required with conservation plans for vegetation management projects within the 75-foot high water mark and on slopes within 300 feet. The strip of land within 35 feet from the shoreline is a no-touch buffer zone, and vegetation removal is prohibited, goes on to say, not to exceed 35% of the shoreline frontage. Talk about removing dead vegetation, etc. But that's really it. So you're allowed to, the view corridor is 35% of your frontage. And it seems to relate primarily to, limiting the amount of vegetation you disturb along the shoreline within that 35-foot range.
And their issue with that was to what extent?
They're going to 35.5 feet.
Instead of
because it includes the viewing corridor, the stairs are take up a percentage of that viewing corridor, and then the boathouse would add to it. So then it brings them in excess of the viewing corridor they're allowed.
Okay.
So 35% of 75 feet is the 26 feet that Darren is bringing our attention to in his design.
So I think what came up in discussion is like you might have, if you have a plot with stairs leading down to a boathouse, right, that would be a smaller viewing corridor, but since the stairs are alongside the boathouse, that widens the viewing corridor. You're disturbing more of that shoreline as a percentage of your shoreline within that 35-foot buffer.
Right.
So it's not so much a viewing corridor, but just the amount of the width of your lot that you're allowed to disturb within that 35-foot shoreline. Viewing corridor is kind of a misnomer.
That's a horrible term for it. Yeah. All right.
Did we ever determine what the dimensions of this boathouse are?
Yes, we had drawings. Did we not?
Yeah, so there's an artist depiction, so it kind of shows the stairs as it leads to the boathouse and things. We do have the dimensions. They weren't asking for a variance on the dimensions.
No, it's just the height of
The height.
But there is a
Structure.
maximum number of square feet.
Yeah, and they weren't asking for a variance on the maximum number of square feet.
it was
So
the
I just
height.
didn't know what the
Yeah,
square
it was
feet
in here.
was.
150.
Depending upon the slope of your hill. If it's greater than 12 degrees, it's 150.
I don't see the dimensions though, Rich.
I couldn't find
I
it.
thought we had them, but maybe.
I think it's just a rendering, but
Actually, on the plat, it says 10.5 by 4.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh,
You look at how exactly.
lot in dimension.
okay.
10.5 by what?
14.
That's fine. That's not what we're here to talk about. The other item would be the height. And that is due to the grade and the steepness of the frontage as it sits, that the boathouse, if it was 10 feet high, would basically be under dirt for part of it. So I can appreciate that issue. Any other discussion regarding that?
I think what's material here is in the ordinance for boathouses, there's actually two sets of rules. So there's a set of rules on slopes greater than 12%. There's a set of rules for slopes less than 12%, right?
Okay.
So greater than 12%, you have a maximum square footage of this is under boathouses, of 150 square feet, and that's not at issue here. Maximum 10 foot, maximum sidewall of 10 feet and pitch of, a 412 pitch. Same dimensions and slopes of 12% or less, although it does allow for a larger square footage. Up to 400 square feet when that slope's steeper. So in ordinance, they do account for higher slopes by reducing the footprint of an allowable structure in terms of square footage. But per ordinance, it's still, regardless of whether it's less than or greater than 12%, ordinance states 10-foot sidewall and a 4x12 pitch.
Can I just add, it's not actually the sidewall that's it,
It's the
it's
peak.
the eave height, and which means where the roof line starts compared to the front shoreline. And the issue there is that if you start at that spot, the pitch, for those of you who went out there, saw it's closer to 53% instead of 12%. And so,
It's steep.
yeah, so you can't put anything there that the dirt won't come over if you make it 10 feet. So it's the same wall height, but the eave height is what Darren said, coming from the shoreline.
Right, so like looking down to the lake from your side yard, where that would be, basically all you're gonna see is the roof sticking out of the ground right there. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. Okay. So I thought it was kind of hard, because last time we held up that thing and showed you that. So I just put it up for those of you who went out. The lake is here, kind of at an angle, and the boathouse is black. The two trees are there, but the stairwell comes like this. And the problem, according to the architects, is if you move the stairwell, you change the risk of erosion significantly. And you'll see at the top of the sheet that I gave you, that the quote from that page from Walworth County says the main thing you want to do is avoid disruption or that erosion and things. So we tried to stick it here without moving the stairwell. And from the front, as you come up, once you get to the back of that, the height of the hill is 11 and a half feet higher than the shore. So you just have to make the roof there, or as Mr. Sully said, it'd be under dirt. That makes sense?
So basically you could walk from the grade that's opposite the lake and step on your roof. Is that what I'm understanding?
You could walk down here and step onto the roof.
Yes.
Yeah, if you were interested in that. If you made it flat, which is illegal, you could go sit, maybe they just changed it sometimes, but you could step on it. But the roof thing, everything else is the same, however your grade is, but the total width is what they cut down, so or the total area. Right? So that's better. And currently, I don't know if you guys walked out there, but trying to carry everything up here every evening is challenging, even with 3 boys. So that's what the boathouse is meant for, is to clear off all that stuff and put it in there. I believe the word blight was used in discussing this. But does that?
Paul, just to make a comment, it's standing on their porch and then on their first level and imagining where the boathouse would be and what obstruction, if any, it would have. The roof itself is basically the water. It's not touching the sky. It's not disrupting the neighbor in any way. It's just, if you were to look to the left or the right of the roof, of the, as proposed, you're seeing water. The
Right,
mill
I
pond.
guess that was my point, was that it's not gonna be towering out of the
No,
ground
not
or
at
anything
No,
like that.
even
Even though it's gonna be over height, it's not like this thing
Not
that's
gonna
gonna be
block
a
the neighbor's
visual.
view.
No.
No, it's right next to their, it kind of buddies up next to their boathouse, and it's in this corner. And the pier and someone else pointed out that the pier and the boat and everything else were there, so you had asked before, could you move it to the other side? You could, you have the same viewing, whatever you want to call it, the viewing corridor thing's still the same. The problem there is then you start moving the pier and the boathouse in the 50 years where everybody's lived there, all of a sudden the swimming area moves over here, and the neighbors over here don't really have their own and use our swimming area, gets moved, so everything kind of moves once you move a boat. So,
So it would be too long, a bigger viewing quarter can go down.
yeah, I mean, that doesn't change, it gets big no matter where you put it. And the term vegetation, for those of you who walked out there, that hill, there's no vegetation, it's like rocks, despite efforts to make something grow.
All right, any other comments regarding the height variance portion of this request?
Height of the boathouse now.
And the last part, the third part of the trifecta here is they want to be placed closer to the lot line with the wall 1.5 feet from the line. And that would be 1.5 feet closer, I believe, than what's allowed.
Yes. Yeah, I looked at it and thought, what could go wrong? You know, could somebody get trapped in there? Could somebody fall in there? There doesn't seem to be a risk to me of danger. In addition, the neighbor there has signed a letter in support of the variance, as well as the neighbor next to him and the two neighbors on the other side, which is a lot of written support for anything we see.
Well, I think both his adjoining neighbors both have boathouses, so it's kind of hard for them to say no.
Yeah.
My concern there is the ordinance calls for 3-foot setback. I think that's about as accommodating as you can get in terms of setbacks. I don't know about one that's lower. 1.5 foot setback, 6 inches for the eave. You really are splitting hairs there. That doesn't give you much room to work on the structure or to maintain the structure without imposing on the neighboring property. I don't know how you walk through there without stepping on the neighbor's property. Frankly, I don't know how you construct it without obstructing without interfering with the neighbor's property. So there's that.
I don't know if you saw it, but you can't walk through there. You're building on the side of, there's nothing there. And the other guy's boathouse comes right up to the same thing with a solid wall. There's nothing. There's no windows or doors, it's all in front. And this is true, but the other thing is if you move it over, you run into the stairwell, and in order to build a boathouse there of what we're allowed, that's sort of where it goes. I understand that you don't want to start impinging on someone else's property. It's like being in somebody's closet. There's no space. For those of you who walked out, maybe.
It's tight.
I don't disagree with that.
But you could make your boathouse 1.5 foot smaller too. You wouldn't have to, then you wouldn't have to infringe on your stairs. And I agree with Ben, 3 feet is not a very big setback. So,
To me, I understand, there's a justification that, the justification that was provided was move it closer to that lot line. 1.5 feet from the lot line moves it a little bit further away from the tree, and the arborist's view changes the risk to the health of that tree from a moderate risk to a low risk. So it's still not no risk, but it's low risk. And 1.5 feet is really pretty tight. So I guess to me, when I look at all of this, I think I think you can see some merit to the ask, but the root of this is it a hardship? It is, given the nature of how the retaining walls and the current stair is constructed, does that justify a hardship for the viewing corridor, the setback, and the height of the boathouse? And the applicant said that, well, it would, there'd be an erosion risk if they had to reconfigure the retaining wall and the stair to accommodate a boathouse, say, on the other side of the property. So I can appreciate that. But what we are not to consider for a variance is a financial hardship. So the cost of reconfiguring a retaining wall, the cost of reconfiguring a stairwell, that's not a consideration for this commission. It's really a hardship that, to follow the letter of the ordinance, is that presenting a hardship for this property owner? For me, it doesn't. It really doesn't. To me, this is, potentially a financial hardship or a wish to configure this property in a certain way. That's how I view it.
Fair enough.
Well, a contrary view might be, they're asking to do everything in their power to preserve the property as it is, not start moving retaining walls, try and save the trees, which they look healthy, and we should respect that those trees do exist and should be protected, and they'd rather not be moving their walkway. I don't think we've ever said anything about money.
Well, I think, to be clear though, there is some risk to that tree if you built that boathouse there, and we're increasing the impervious surface within that shoreline to exceed ordinance. That's what we're being asked to approve. So I think
If we did-
there's harm to public interest here,
How's
because
that?
there is low risk to that tree, and that's harming the public interest. This isn't a decision of, allowing the property owner to remove the tree, to place the boathouse 3 feet at that location, 3 feet from the property line, because that would also require a variance. You have to remove the tree, a healthy tree like that. So to me, it really comes down to what's the hardship that necessitates constructing a boathouse 1.5 feet from the property line, exceeding the ordinance in terms of viewing corridor, vegetation management within the 35-foot shoreline setback, right? And then the height of the structure as well.
Is it feasible to reduce the width of that boathouse?
You could make anything narrower than you can, but it's already 10 feet wide, 10.5 feet wide. So if you reduce it, it's a 9-foot boathouse, and if you wanted to make it the size that you are allowed to make, which is 150 square feet, you would then make it, if you make it 9 feet, you'd make it 16 feet long instead of
But
50 feet
is
long.
it, if you did that, if you reduced it 1.5 feet, it still serve the purpose that you need. It doesn't matter you're allowed, if that isn't what you're.
So you don't have to build it 150 square
Right.
feet.
Yeah,
It's pretty small, it's 150 square feet.
We get it.
So from the Walworth County thing, you're permitted the placement of this, of a 150 square foot boathouse. If you wanted to make it 110 feet or something, you could do that, you could make it a shed. But as far as that goes, there's no issue with our neighbors in any way placing boathouse where we're doing it. They actually think it's better than that. The arborist actually said that the risk to the tree is low or almost non-existent placed there, but moved to the other side is not. And since that he's actually an expert in that, I will go with what he said. And
We don't want to lose the trees, we
Yeah.
love the trees.
but if you reduce the size of the boathouse, that doesn't affect the trees at all.
yeah, you can make the boathouse narrower. You can't.
But then we have to go back further. 'Cause
If
you
we
only
want-
have 16 then, or.
Well, if you maintain 150.
You don't have to have 150 square feet.
No, you don't have to, but you're
We're trying to
entitled to, if you look at the thing, we're trying to fit things in.
You're entitled to as long as you meet the
Setbacks,
Correct.
setbacks.
right, which you're not doing.
Right.
So
That would be one
And it
way
opens
to
up a whole-
eliminate that problem on that side.
If you, okay, I don't know, if you walked over there, I don't believe that that's a big deal.
How many of you were able to go look at the?
I would look at it.
Okay. All right, so good. So,
If we were to approve the variance, then Mr. Schwanke from the Walworth County Zoning Administration makes it clear, we advise they approve. If they approve, the next step is the key to our discussion, and that's their requirement to get an approved erosion control permit and a conservation plan with a permit. Then the reality of the job is gonna set in. Then they're gonna have to, that's when that financial decision comes into play. I think they're making reasonable requests, given the limitation of the property, as well as the neighbors being uniformly in support of this.
That's where I disagree. I don't think the property, the nature of this property isn't such that a boathouse must go in that location. I mean, of course, you'd have to
say.
No, it is. It
They're
is,
asking us
it
for a
is for us
variance.
to evaluate, if I'm to put a boathouse there, if I'm trying to place a boathouse on this property in accordance with the ordinance, am I so limited that the only reasonable location would be there? I think that's what we have to evaluate. And it's a steep slope, of course. There's retaining walls were constructed. I assume there's a variance pulled, or they predate the zoning, because, the current zoning code, because to construct a retaining wall within the shoreland zoning, it requires a variance. So I'm going to assume that was done some years back.
Let us have our discussion, sir, if you wouldn't mind.
But
Just- we're gonna have
I
our
don't
discussion
see,
here.
I don't see how this property, the topography of the property or the ordinance and, the law as written really only accommodates a boathouse at that location.
So the way I see it
That's
is they're looking for kind of three variances, right? The side yard, the height, and the vision corridor, if you will. We've definitely done in the past, if we're, for example, if we were okay with the height, but not okay with the side yard and not okay with the vision corridor, we could approve it accordingly. So I'm just kind of throwing that out there. If you just have a big problem with all of it all together, fine.
Right.
But I'm just saying, I think we could tier our approval or disapproval. So
Any other discussion amongst the board? I think we're at a point where we could take a motion in one direction or another.
I'll make a motion that we approve the variance request as outlined in the letters of support, which are consistent with what they wrote. But do I need to read those into the record? It's the four neighbors list 1, 2, 3, and 4 on the letter that they're signing off on for this property, which include the lot line at 1.5 feet, the boathouse eve to exceed 10 feet at 11 feet 6 inches, and to allow the vision corridor to be widened to 35.5 feet.
I have a motion. Is there a second? There is no second. Motion fails. Is there any other business amongst the board? Discussion?
I guess I would be willing to make a motion if you'd have it. I would move that we accept the height, variance for the height, but deny the side yard setback and the vision corridor setback.
I would second that.
We have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
No,
Motion carries.
So can I just ask, we don't have a vision corridor allowance, or we do?
No.
No. Okay, so we don't have a boathouse.
Sorry.
Okay. No. Look elsewhere.
All right.
Okay.
Any other conversation or issues between other business?
Do I have an old agenda, or is there another item on the agenda?
Number 3, McCarthy Black.
Oh. All right,
There's
I thought that had
I
been,
believe there's a representative.
all right.
We just tabled it until today,
Gotcha.
last time.
All right, so our agenda item number 2 is a variance for the Dave and Mary Berg are requesting for a garage. That's the wrong one, sorry.
Number 4.
The CSM for McCarthy and Blackburns are requesting a CSM approval to divide the existing ownership and create 2 buildable lots. The majority of buildable land is lying within the town of Waterford. Is there somebody here to speak? Would you like to step up to the microphone, state your name, address, and what's happening here?
Tom McCarthy, 31126 Bushnell Road, Burlington, Wisconsin. We bought a 10-acre parcel. We're just looking to divide it equally. There's only a small chunk down at the bottom of the, got my directions mixed up. There's just a small area down at the bottom. And as far as the 2 buildings,
So,
they're going to be single-family dwellings. They're not
Okay,
strip malls or anything like that.
and it's currently zoned how?
That I don't even know. I'm guessing agriculture.
Okay,
C4?
It says, the application states that they're not C4 to C4, so it's not a zoning change, it's a
Just-
division of the property. That's how I read it.
got it. All right, any questions of the applicant?
Well, I guess, where's the town line run?
I think it's, the part we're questioning, or that's being questioned, is this area right down here. This is all Racine County and, or.
Okay,
Waterford.
that's right, it's this triangle here then. Okay, so,
Yeah, it might be that whole thing. I'm not
Yeah.
sure. But there won't be any dwelling down there.
So-
2 dwellings are gonna be held.
so right now, this is one contiguous property,
Correct.
and you're creating lot 1 and lot 2 from that point on the west that runs on that county line over.
It'll come right back. So,
Okay.
lot 1, lot 2.
Yeah, I don't know what the zoning is.
For sure. All right, well, that seems fairly straightforward. I mean, they're both gonna be 5-acre lots, 5-acre plus lots.
I could just add a little bit this, the civil engineer, Don Chapwood did call me before this. And to be honest, our discussion, I was kind of like, I don't know that you really have to come before us. Cause so much of it is in Racine County. But he was convinced, and through a long discussion, I said, well, okay, let's just get it on the agenda. Let's talk about it. So again, like Paul was saying, C5 both, that's kind of our minimum anyway. There's not even 10 acres in East Troy or in Walworth County. So that's just my little tidbit that I
Sure.
know about it. So
I do feel like this is just, it's our jurisdiction, it's more of a formality than anything. The lot is going to be accessed from Honey Creek Road in Waterford and Racine.
and it's almost like an
County.
extraterritorial kind of
Mhm.
Right.
feel to it,
The
even though
divi-
some technically is in, but
it's in East Troy, but the division occurs in Racine.
correct.
All right, yeah.
And that's why I wasn't even sure it needed to come before us. So I guess to me, this is kind of a formality on our end. If Waterford or Racine County has a problem with it, let them have a problem with it.
All right.
At least we dotted our i's here and crossed our
Yep.
t's, right?
Understood?
All right, give us a moment to open it up to the public and we'll take it from there.
All right.
Would anybody like to speak in favor of the proposal? Is there anybody who would like to speak against the proposal? All right. Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion, we approve the CSM at N7480 Bell School Road, PET 3600010A as presented.
I have a motion.
I'll second.
You have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. All right, now we have,
That we look at the agenda, or the minutes from March 6th to get a vote.
all right.
Thank you, gentlemen. Have a nice night.
Thanks.
Thank you. Did anybody have any comments other than that one correction that was corrected? Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
I move that we approve the minutes from the last meeting.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
All right. Any other business?
One brief item. So Jen and I chatted and exchanged some information around, different things we could add to a variance permit, a conditional use zoning. So I think we have that, we'll have that for a draft of that in the packet for next month.
Awesome.
So look forward to the discussion.
One other announcement, there's going to be an April 30th educational event sponsored by Walworth County Zoning Administration and the Elkhorn campus for townships such as ourselves and how to best work with them. It's going to be from 3 until 8, I think Tuesday the 30th. I don't know if it's Tuesday, but it is April 30th. Town will pay for it. It's $20, and Chairman Klarkowski is asking all of us to consider attending.
Could you get that to Jen and have Jen,
I already have it. I'll get it out.
could you get it all out to us?
Is that something we have to register for?
Yes.
Okay.
So we should register individually.
Yes.
Okay, that is a Tuesday.
There's a barcode that you just scan and it takes you there. It takes about 3 seconds to register for it.
Awesome.
I got the preview of it, and it's going to help us in terms of what the county wants, what we want, and blending it. Not that we're in dire need of help, but it just looks like a very helpful presentation.
Very good.
Do you want
Anything
that with
else?
the packet, or do you want me to email that ahead of time?
Could you email it? I think it'd be better to get it
I'll do
sooner.
it.
Sure.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Joe, the variance that you proposed, the motion that you made, how would that have played out?